This really isn't a good idea, Beep. Just because you have been playing Reborn, a Samurai Awakens, doesn't mean that you are now a samurai.
I think this is a great idea.
Well, why don't you stand here then?
Think of this as payback for the Verzoom bike you got me for Christmas.
You got me the same thing.
Let's begin.
To begin with, I haven't actually seen everything in this game. The game simply has too many broken gameplay mechanics to make it a worthwhile experience to get through all of it. Anyway, to move around you hold down the move button, and then you can steer slightly using your head. There is no backwards movement button at all, which does make the movement feel very limited, but considering you're always moving from point A to point B in a straight line, it's not really needed. There is no real exploration to be had during your walks, so it would have probably been better to have these movement sections on rails, so that you wouldn't be reminded each time of the restrictive movement. When you reach one of the markers, you are unable to move and a series of enemies appear. Your weapons include lightsabers, pistols, and a gravity glove attack that can launch enemies backwards or can be used to pick up enemies who can then be manually thrown. This attack does need to be recharged before it can be used, which is a good thing, considering how powerful it is. You can dual wield two of the same weapons or have a different one in each hand. Some enemies will get close to you and fight you with their own lightsabers. To deal a decent amount of damage to them, you must first open them up to one of your attacks, which you do with a well-placed block of your own lightsaber. It's easy to see whereabouts their attack will come from thanks to their swing animation just before, so placing your lightsaber in its way in time is not an issue. The issue is that blocking just doesn't work most of the time, which is one of the reasons why this game is quite a chore to get through. Luckily, health pickups are given to you at a very generous rate, and honestly, if they wasn't, I doubt I would have carried on playing the game at all, mainly because you often take damage from a lightsaber block not working. Although it is a good thing that it's hard to die during the main parts of each level, it obviously removes any sense of challenge or satisfaction when beating for waves of enemies. Enemies' movements are also pretty poor. I encountered them moving quite far behind me, which prevented the PlayStation camera from tracking the move controllers momentarily, and I even had to return to a previous checkpoint numerous times because the enemy got stuck in either a constant movement or teleportation loop. In the end, I gave up playing this level completely. Luckily, you don't have to complete a level to move on to the next. Drones shoot at you from afar. These shots can be blocked with your lightsabers, and unlike the blocking when faced with the other lightsaber wielding enemies, the blocking here does work all the time. Maybe a bit too well though, as you can position one lightsaber just in front of you, which will protect you from incoming fire all of the time, and then you can use your other hand to shoot a pistol. It doesn't require much skill from you at all. These drones also fire laser beams towards you, which must be dodged with real world movements. Other enemies also require you to move out of the way and even duck under them, which does make it a game that you will need to stand to play. The problem is that they don't always understand your position in the virtual world, and they will likely clip through you, which obviously isn't a very visually enjoyable experience. This even happens in the boss battles. They are simply unaware of your position, and it makes fighting them a harder challenge than it should be. You're battling for mechanics of the game rather than the actual boss. The game comes with 26 trophies, but it's not too much of an overwhelming list, as most can be categorised into groups. Loads are tied to killing enemies with a certain weapon, which won't be too hard to get at all, considering the sheer amount that keep on spawning one after another. You'll also need to beat every level and get the S rank on each. The actual list is very good, but considering how broken elements of the game are, it's going to be a pretty hard list to complete. The basics of a decent wave fighter / shooter are here, but the game just isn't polished enough, and most of the gameplay elements are executed very poorly. The fact that blocking just doesn't work well much at all, along with the same types of enemies spawning one after another in long sessions, just makes this game a massive effort to get through. What the game does get right is putting you up against different types of enemies at the same time, as it requires you to observe each battle more and switch between your weapons for the current situation, but considering elements elements of combat don't always work. It removes the satisfaction of getting the upper hand when faced with a group of enemies. Overall, I just can't recommend it. I normally push myself to see everything a game has to offer, but when too much of it doesn't work right, and it's repeated over and over again in a very tedious way, then I just have to say it's not worth playing through it all. Right now, it's simply not in a proper functioning state.
This is worse for me. CJ can get away with all of his hair cut off.
It's only fair that you have a turn now. Don't worry though, Beep's not using a sword this time.
What is he using then?